Yeah, so the action the council took here a little while ago was part of a legislative issue that was approved by the state 2 years ago. And what it does is it allows cities to capture the state's portion of the hotel occupancy tax for only a 30-year period and just the increment in order to make investments in convention centers or other venues in order to increase the economic impact and the competitiveness of Texas against the rest of the country. What the county is talking about is in the venue tax is a portion of local hotel occupancy tax that has to be approved by voters and can only be spent under certain attributes allowed by state.
The other thing, why did this PFC option come about?
So it came about back in 2023. There was a very limited ability for Texas municipalities to access this economic development tool. Only the city of Fort Worth had it prior to 2023. Legislation, SB 2220, was approved by the legislature and the governor in 23, and it allowed that to be utilized, that tool to be utilized by San Antonio and Houston.
Using the PFC to fund a sports arena was never part of the original plan that you all asked the state legislature for in 2023. I'm curious what specifically changed the plan to make the city say, let's add this arena into it.
So Molly, Megan asked that question and I answered it on Monday, but I'll answer it again for you. Originally, 2023, the convention center and the Alamo Dome were part of our whole conversation with the state. Part of what we've done over the last couple of months in working with the comptroller's office, there are timelines associated with projects. Originally, the council approved the designation of two projects in December of 23, the convention center and the Alamo Dome. There is a five-year, Ben called it a shot clock, right? Right now, as we've developed the funding framework for the district and our assets there, the convention center and the Alamo Dome, we know we're going to have to size this over time. The other reality is that since the conversations and the signing of the MOU with the county and the Spurs earlier this year, we have been working on a funding framework for an NBA arena. You heard Ben out there mention that the definition that's allowed under state statute for utilizing the PFC is a convention center or a venue. A venue is defined a number of different ways in state law, and we believe an NBA arena is potentially a use. And since the MOU that we signed with both the other entities, we've been working on a funding framework. And one of the things I shared on Monday was that the funding framework, which is still under development, to hope to bring to council here soon, revolves around five major revenue sources. One, the Spurs. Two, the county's venue tax, and I know the county's working through that issue. Three, private development that would occur on Hemisphere Park and the surrounding area. Four, what I'll call revenue from an arena or leases, land leases for the development, and then fifth, the PFZ. But as the mayor mentioned here a second ago, we have three collective efforts here. The first priority is the convention center, and over 30 years, the PFZ certainly gives us the latitude to be able to utilize it. It starts small and grows. Part of the action we made that the council took today is resets our base year to 2025. So previous actions have set that base year in 2023, but we think still for 30 years that's a tool, an important tool that we want to be able to utilize.
I guess to escape the shot clock, why couldn't you have just made this one project, the convention center complex, and just had the Alamo Dome and the convention center in it? I mean,
originally.
Why couldn't you have done the revision? If one of the reasons is we have this shot clock and we are not going to do the Alamo Dome for 10 years, why not just make this complex those two original projects? Is it because the county venue tax is going to generate far less revenue expected, that the Spurs don't want to foot as much of the cost? I mean, why
I'm not
just
even sure I understand the question.
You said there were two projects, both had to be started within 5 years. If the problem was the shot clock, couldn't you have just done this new convention center complex with those two? you still,
No.
that way you still,
No, I don't think so.
you would have had, you
No,
have to.
I'm having a hard time understanding. What
Well, you said it started out as 2 projects.
Right.
Why not just combine them into one under this complex without the arena? Wouldn't that have solved your shot clock problem?
Well, no, because obviously we're working on a funding framework for an NBA arena with the county and the Spurs as the MOU. So we could have done a project for the convention center and dome, but it's no secret we're working on a funding framework for an NBA arena along with the county and the Spurs. So it's an eligible expense under statute, and it made more sense to give ourselves the flexibility to be able to call it, and that's part of the conversation we had with the comptroller's office, is a convention center complex that encompasses all 3 of those potential, or 2 of those assets and potentially a 3rd.
Right, but why, you mentioned here, it's no secret, the NBA arena, but at the time, in December 2023, I think it had already started to report that you were looking at an NBA arena as well, so why not just add it in at that time? What changed between 2023 and now?
Like 24 months. Time. We've been working on this for a while. So as this is developed, and part of this is making sure that we can work with the comptroller's office. We've never done it before. There's only one other city in the state that has worked in this PFZ. So the comptroller's office has been extremely helpful in helping us administer and thinking through this. And it makes sense now, especially as we're working on this funding framework.
But this was not because of pressure from the Spurs to have them in?
No.
When do you anticipate the city finally?
Sorry. It certainly had nothing to do with whatever you asked about on the county venue stuff.
Okay.
The fact that the county's putting the Spurs arena down at the bottom of its priorities.
I don't know anything about that. You can ask the county.
Well, that's what they say.
Okay, well then that's their news.
When
No breaking news from the city manager today.
When is the city going to share its projected estimates of what the PFC is going to generate?
So it's a little bit less than what the state comptroller's office came up with as part of the legislative session, and I think Ben shared with the group on Monday. It's probably around the $2 billion range.
Okay, so $2 billion is the estimate you all anticipate.
That's not the final number. It's around there. We'll finalize that as we do that funding framework and lay it out publicly.
Okay, so we can expect to see the final number when we see.
Yeah, our projections.
And
yes, ma'am.
by funding framework, can you clarify what are we going to learn when that's publicly unveiled? How much each party plans to commit, or how much these individual sources could raise towards this?
Probably both, Molly. Yeah, and there are assumptions about development, and that's a big part that is. That we're spending a lot of time on, and but probably, I shouldn't say probably. Hopefully, both answers to both of your questions.
You mentioned that you're planning to have a public presentation within the month. Is that going to be on the final framework or just a status update?
I would say it's probably a status update. I don't think it'll be final yet. We've got to get some feedback from the council, and part of that is also the additional due diligence we have to do.
To be able to get the venue tax out on the November ballot, they've got to get it out to the comptroller's office. They're looking at like a July 8th timeline. Do you anticipate having the total spending framework done before then?
Potentially, yeah. But one of the things that's critical for us also that'll be part of the next council update is the infrastructure needed for the surrounding area. Regardless of what goes on the corner of Cesar Chavez and 37, there's infrastructure improvements that need to be made. If we do those things, that's more of a general infrastructure expense of the city. And as we've talked about publicly before, that would have to go to the voters. If the council chooses, the council could place that on a ballot for the voters to decide whether or not to invest in that infrastructure.
Would that be a bond?
Yes, sir.
And any idea how much that's going to cost ballpark, the infrastructure part?
No, we'll lay that out as we do our next presentation publicly. We're trying to finalize that right now.
Any economic impact study been done yet?
The economic impact analysis is underway right now, and hopefully that'll be part of the next update as well.
The funding framework, do you anticipate presenting that to the mayor and council before or after the new council is sworn in?
Part of that will rest on us getting the work done. We're relying upon some outside folks to do the economic impact analysis. Presumably, I would think probably both, right, before and after I don't think it's a kind of a one and done conversation. So I think we're going to have to be sensitive to the fact that there's going to be a transition of elected officials here, and so probably both, Molly.
But the public outreach plan is going to be happening after the funding it?
No, it'll probably start before, Garrett. Yeah, and that'll last longer than just a couple of weeks. That's probably more of a sustained effort about how folks feel about the look and feel and the attributes and the components of a district.
Will they be asked about the funding sources? Will their thoughts on
I'm sure there'll be a lot of conversation about that.
Will it factor into the final framework, or are you anticipating just whatever's happening in the conversations between the three entities, city, county, and Spurs?
No, I mean, I think you'll hear, I think the council will be interested in that. Certainly as city manager, I'm interested in getting that feedback. Those are questions that we need to be able to answer. And I know the council, you heard Councilwoman Core out there. I mean, it's important to the council members, and I don't think it's going to be a short process necessarily to come to a final.
I just want to be clear, if people have strong feelings about how this should or shouldn't be funded, if their input at these meetings is going to end up altering the city's plan.
I would encourage people not to necessarily wait. I mean, if they have strong feelings, there's plenty of ways to get engaged right now. I wouldn't say that they have to wait for the community engagement meeting that the city's going to have. There's plenty of mediums, and I get a lot of feedback directly, and I'm sure the mayor and council do. So if people have strong feelings about that they should let us know now.
By adding the Spurs Arena into the complex that you want to use this money for, does that undercut your ability to be able to achieve the Alamo Dome and Convention Center projects by now splitting this money three-way instead of two, especially since it sounds like the Alamo Dome improvements are more expensive than originally anticipated?
No, I don't think so, Garrett. I think it gives us more latitude to figure out how we finance into our important assets like the convention center. I don't think it's as easy as just dividing that number by three. It's we have to figure out how to finance issued debt, be able to pay off that debt, and do it in an incremental way, and then braided with other revenue sources like development. So no, I don't. I think today's action actually gives us a little bit more latitude to think through and plan for this financially.
And there can't be any other project or sub-projects added into that complex, right? It's only those three venues that the PFZ money could fund.
Yes. Well, yeah. Let me reemphasize what Ben said out there. That in accordance with the statute, the PFZ can be invested in a convention center or venue. Venue is defined in state law, and Ben said it out there: coliseums, arenas, the Alamo Dome, stadiums. It's it's defined very concisely and precisely. We can't use PFZ for other sources or other uses, and that's why Ben said in some of the questioning that if it doesn't fall within the state definition, then unlikely we'd be able to use it.
But something that falls within that definition could be added in later. What I'm asking is if the complex is that defined literally as only the convention center, Alamo Dome, and arena, or if some other qualifying project gets added into that area, could it be used on it?
You're asking me a hypothetical.
Yeah,
I mean,
I am.
I don't anticipate that. I think if there was, I don't anticipate that. And
Okay.
I think if there was any change, a year from now, 2 years from now, down the road, it would have to conform with state law and be consistent with what the mayor and council want.
And then just to be clear on the shot clock stuff, with the 5 years, under the original way the PFC was, you would have had to start on both of those within 5 years, not one or the other.
Yes,
Okay.
correct.
Now it's any one of these.
Right.
And the
It gives us a
complex is
little more
underway.
latitude in terms of time.
Sorry, Eric, you may have answered this question, but why was it important for you guys to have this as an option for the Spurs Arena, given obviously that you guys are having contributions coming in from other places?
Well, it was important because as we put together the funding framework that was referred to in the MOU, I answered this earlier, but I'll say it again. So as we're putting together that funding framework for council feedback and review and discussion is the venue tax, at the county that would have to be approved by voters. The Spurs, development in that area, in the Hemisphere Park area. 4, revenue from development leases or revenue from a potential arena, and 5, the PFZ. So it's one of a number of different revenue sources, but to Garrett's question, it's kind of that PFZ is braided also with expectations and plans and priorities that we have to fund an expansion of the convention center and down the road Alamo Dome.
And we still don't have figures for how much the Spurs is contributing and how much the city is planning to contribute.
Correct.
And are we still, is the estimate of the arena costing up to 1.5 billion still the maximum estimate?
That hasn't changed since the last time we talked. I mean, that's the number, but I keep hearing different things, but we're planning for, we haven't got any official numbers about what an NBA arena are. We're thinking between I think what we've said before, 1.3 to 1.5 billion.
Mm-hmm.
So how do you set up a multi-pronged funding plan if you don't know what the final number is?
Well, I mean, 1.3 to 1.5, they're targets. I mean, is it going to be 1.2? Is it going to be 1.6? I mean, I think based on construction prices and what other bills are going for, I think that's a pretty safe estimate.
And then what's the timeline for how soon you anticipate starting the convention center, which is that first priority, and then also the timeline for starting the Spurs arena?
I think a lot of that discussion relies upon the follow-up work that the council asked us to do in December, and the additional programming for potential building. I think the economic impact analysis is critical to that because that is an important part of our economy. I would think that, and the mayor said it a second ago, that would likely be the first project, but we still have a lot of work to do, and we'll need to get this in front of the new mayor and council and make sure we're still on the same page.
What would likely be the first project?
Convention center.
We've got time for a couple more questions, guys.
Okay, I lost track. Are you also using the city's portion of hotel occupancy for this project, or just the state's?
What the council talked about today is just the state's portion. In terms of the convention center, we are looking at using our local hotel occupancy tax to fund part of that expansion as well.
But not the arena.
Right, correct. There are restrictions around that.
And which is bigger? I mean, in terms of a source of funds, is it the state's cut of those taxes or the city's cut?
Well, it changes over time, Jay, because the PFZ that the council talked about today, approved today, grows incrementally over 30 years. So in the first year, it's not going to be a lot, but over 30 years, incrementally, it'll grow. So it changes over time. The hotel occupancy tax that we collect is pretty steady. I mean, it took a severe decline during COVID, but it has come back. We're about $105, $110 million a year, pretty consistent in terms of the local hotel occupancy tax. So it'll change over the 30-year period.
Is the local one bigger than the state's cut?
Right now, yes.
And then when you were talking about team revenues as that fifth part of your multi-pronged approach there, can you give some examples of what that might look like? I took it as kind of the mission style where you have the ticket fee and the lease payments from the team. Is there anything else?
You've been hanging around City Hall too long.
Yeah.
I should be asking you the questions.
I
mean,
That's what we're talking about.
Is it
Okay, so
naming
really-
rights as well, or is that not included?
Oh, we haven't talked about naming rights,
Okay.
but exactly what you're referring to: leases, ticket fees, that type of stuff.
Leases, say, beyond the arena?
Well, yeah, because that's part of if there's a private development that occurs there, then we would anticipate those would be leases to the city for the use of that property.
Okay.
Yeah.
All right, thanks everyone.
Thank you.
All right, rock and roll.